So if you are a person that's watching on video, the very first thing you would have done is to take the test and get the results. And here in the class, we just went over the results. And actually, those results, you guys, will be the basis for the next 12 weeks as we go forward. But this tonight is a real foundational kind of teaching. And I would like for someone to volunteer to read for me Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 and 12. Ephesians 4, 11 and 12. So we're talking about team ministry. And one of the key verses that we will look at over the next 12 weeks is Ephesians chapter 4, 11 and 12. Kay, did you find that one? Would you mind to read it for us?
And he himself gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers, for the equipping of the saints, for the work of ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ.
Okay, so notice that Paul, he's writing to the church in Ephesus, and he names what we call the fivefold ministry gifts to the church. Apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers. Those five ministries are a gift to the church. Like it or not, I'm your gift, okay? Some of you might think, gee, I wish I got a better gift than the one I got. And you got a good argument. I can't argue with that. But no, the truth is that God gives a gift to the church, and it is those fivefold ministry leaders who see to it that ministry is conducted. But that part right there may not be revelation knowledge to you. You might have already known that or thought that. And some people tend to think, well, you know, duh. I mean, isn't that what a pastor is? We hire a pastor to do ministry. I mean, that's what pastors are for. Well, here's the revelation knowledge. The role of the fivefold ministry leaders to the church is to equip the saints. It's found in verse 12. And the saints carry on the ministry. My job, I have had seasons where I've done very well at doing my job. Right now, I'm in a season of frustration because I'm not doing my job well. I'm working super hard at the job. But what isn't happening is that well, let me say it this way. It's stymied, it's stopping at one layer. It's not penetrating to the depths that I dream of. We've had better successes at different stretches over the 9 years here at our church. And right now, I am again at a point where I'm praying, God, give me developers of developers. And I'm believing that we are going to see out of this group right here and out of others who are going to be taking the classes as we unleash the new vision as we go into 2014, people who not only decide to get involved and discern what their role is, but then truly take ownership of their ministry and conduct it in an excellent fashion. And it doesn't stop at that level, but it permeates the whole church. What I use, the phrase that I used a moment ago, the developer of developers. Some individuals are willing to get on the team and get involved, but what we need desperately is the ones, we have key individuals who are this already, but we need more of the ones who understand their role and just say, Pastor, just let me sick them, let me do it. Unleash me to do the work of the ministry. not just a doer, but a developer of developers. That's, I'm praying that happens for us as a team. Now, I want you to dream with me for a moment. I asked you last week when we ended the class to come back this week prepared to answer the question, if I could do anything for the Lord I wanted to do, it would be fill in the blank. So be keen for a day. Just dream a little bit with me. If you could do anything you want to do, what would that be? And again, there's no right or wrong answers. And in fact, it's in your workbook. We have it as one of the things that you should fill in. And what I have found is you need to answer these questions before you go through the whole teaching, because it's going to help you later on when you look back to bring definition. It's sort of this idea that says, go with your first impression. Don't think about it too much, but just, if there's anything you could do, what would it be? And that may be the way that the Lord is showing you some areas where you could be involved. Because very often He works through the area of our desires, what we enjoy, what we like. No, it may not be that, and you know, this is not by any stretch a commitment on your part to do something, and I'm not asking you to do something, but let's dream a little bit. Any of you that are ready to answer, if you want to answer it out loud, there's no right or wrong. You could do anything you want. What would that be? Yeah?
A hands ministry. I would love to do signing and musicals and puppetry and that kind of thing for all ages. Like not just the children, but so we have adults or anyone that wants to do it. I would love to.
I have seen you, Kia, doing signing to songs and stuff at different times, and it's so touching. It's
Yeah, I
beautiful. Did I
It's
tell you the
impressive.
story about when Stephanie and I, years ago, we were on staff at Lake Worth in Arlington, Fort Worth, Texas. That was before Arlington. Lake Worth Assembly of God. There was a lady that began a deaf ministry. I don't know if I ever told you that story. She came to Pastor Al and said, I want to start a deaf church. He's like, well, what does that look like? Well, I want to interpret for all the sermons, and I dream of having a section in the church where deaf people come and they get to participate. And so she started the deaf church, and we had no deaf people. And before too long, there were 3 deaf people that sat in those chairs every time, and that was always their church. And it was so cool because that's where I learned. I mean, they would do things like when everybody was saying, hallelujah or amen, they would go like this. So I'm thrilled to hear that. Maybe that will happen. Wouldn't that be awesome if that took place? Anybody else want to share? Dream a little bit. You could do anything you wanted to do. What would it be? Marcia.
People.
Help people? And can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Just-
How would you help them?
You know, any way I could, whether it's financial,
Mm.
you know, and right now obviously I can't, but you know, that's my dream. I mean,
Okay.
I would just, I have such a desire. It just burns inside of me.
Maybe someday I'll be able to share things that I've prayed for 9 years I haven't even told people yet. But man, does that make me leap inside. I'm just excited about that. And you get emotional about
Yeah.
this. It's
It just,
soft
like I
spot
said,
in your
it
heart.
burns inside of me. It's just, that's my desire.
wow, Marcia, that's
You know,
so
that's
cool.
my desire.
That is so cool.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm just sorry we don't have Kleenexes in this room.
No
It's not
thanks.
used. It's just for work, I never stick it in there.
Anybody want to share? You can. Nobody has to, but if you want to.
I would love to open up a Christian daycare center here at church.
Oh, wow.
I'd love to see a whole school develop.
Oh, wow.
That would be awesome.
It's
I'm behind you on that one too.
I'm like, hey, Lord,
I can
yes. I actually have 3. I couldn't write, I was like, okay, I have 3.
That is exciting.
But I would love to have from birth all the way through high school here on this campus.
That is really amazing.
I worked at one in California, and it's,
Yeah,
it is, you know.
Stephanie taught kindergarten at Bethel Christian School. I did the music. We were in involved with the school for 4.5 years. It was.
We have Grace, but I worked at Grace. There's so much.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
And you look at like, Odyssey, it's, it's structured. But we need something with morals and the foundation of
Yeah,
God
yeah.
and their lives.
Absolutely.
Love.
And to me, that's the basis for it. I've heard some pastors say, well, we started a daycare and we need to find the motivation for it. Well, it made money for us. Well, that's good, but the money is not the motivation. The ministry is why you do any.
Eventually it will, but it has to be based on the desire to start it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Anybody else want to share? Okay. All right. Well, I want to give you sort of a foundational teaching for a few moments, and we'll interact and get a little feedback. In the opening of this book, and by the way, I have 10 books ordered. They've been shipped. I don't know. I mean, we did media mail, and they might give you. They told me when we ordered it will be after Christmas. I mean, we'll see. But as I'm reading through the book, I'm realizing I don't know if this is necessarily something that each of you need, anyways. The thing that you're needing, we already have in the handbook as we go through the discussions. So when we get them here, we'll see. Well, we'll just play it by ear and see how that goes. But it seems to be more like this is a teacher's guide, and you're welcome to have it. I really don't know if that's going to benefit you guys that much. But one of the opening stories in chapter 1, he talks about the shift that has to take place in a church, and especially in the heart of the pastor, for a church to be truly effective at becoming a team ministry. And that's the basis for all of this. You've seen this logo, the team ministry approach. Team ministry is what Ephesians 4 is modeling for us. Team ministry says, we're not just going to hire a pastor and say, well, you're the pastor, do the pastor thing and let's grow this church. There was a time in America where that model worked. I'll be honest with you. In the early days of our ministry, we've been in ministry 25 years, we were on staff with one church and one pastor, and I'll not say where or who, but it was the old style of ministry. It was the pastor is the boss. He sits behind the big oak desk. He pounds his fist on the desk and says, do this, do this, do this, and he hires staff, and that's the job of the staff. The staff does what they're supposed to do, and that's how you do ministry. And there was a time in America where that model was effective, honestly. It was sort of the same era when they followed the build it and they will come model. Build a building, announce that we're having church, people will come, as long as you do good quality ministry. But the world has shifted underneath our feet, so to speak, over the last 4 decades. And we find ourselves in a postmodern world in which people used to move into a town and think, I need a doctor, I need a mechanic, I need a church. Church was one of those, where am I going to shop for groceries? But that is not even on the radar for most individuals in current culture. The world has changed. And the model of ministry that is most effective is a team. And how does team ministry work? Well, you still have to have strong pastoral leadership. But the team is most effective when individual members of the church understand what they're gifted to do, and then they're given the freedom to do the ministry. And not have the pastor breathing down their neck, watching their every move, saying, no, I wouldn't have done it that way, you should redo that. Micromanagement will kill a pastor. He'll drop dead of a heart attack, before he reaches 50, because that's not effective ministry. So, in business world, you have what's called the sole proprietor. Maybe proprietor, easy for you to say. It might be called owner, another way of saying that is an owner. And let's just say that that's a business in which there's one individual who does everything. That person is over that business, and they make every decision. So let's say it's a painter, for instance. Well, he orders the paint. He has the relationship with the people at the store. He goes in and charges the paint. He goes to the job site. He stirs the paint. He puts it on the brushes and applies it to the walls and tapes off the walls, and he does the job of painting. And at the end of the day, he's the one who cleans the tools and makes sure they get put away, and he receives the payment and makes sure the payments come in on time and that the bills are also paid on time. He's the sole proprietor. He's the owner. And that is the same model that happens very often in church planting, although that is changing in our time. In the old days, if you wanted to plant a new church, you put up advertisements, you put up the A-frame signs, you announced in the paper that we're meeting down at Holiday Inn in the ballroom and we're having church, and that's how you started. Now, it's way different. You don't start with, a 2-week ramp up to the thing. It's more like the gestation period of pregnancy. It's a 9-month journey, getting your team in place. Who's going to minister to children? Who's going to take care of our young people? What are we going to do for music? How is the nursery going to operate? All of these things have to be in place before a church can launch. I'm really excited what God's doing with a new church in our town, The Bridge. We're the sponsoring church for The Bridge, and that church is doing it the right way. I mean, they're getting their team in place. They're gaining their momentum. They're beginning preview services first part of this new year, and then at Easter time they're planning to launch the full ministry. So, but see, in church life, church planting, while I say that may not be a fair way to describe it, it's sort of like the owner, the sole proprietor. And a lot of churches never move past this right here. So now, then the next level would be manager. When you get into management, then the manager is not the one necessarily that does everything on the job, but he still has the responsibility for everything on the job. So that means that a manager hires people to help him. And a lot of times in church life, the traditional model has looked like this. Well, that's why we hire staff. Now, in our particular case here, we have not hired staff. I'll be honest with you, it is a dream, a goal of mine. I want it for our church. I want it for our families to be able to have key leaders at different levels that we're able to really do ministry with excellence. But I am very, very thankful for our team of volunteers. We have individuals in place, do you know, who never receive a dime, but I don't worry about, well, is youth going to be taken care of? Hey, for instance, Lynetta Holcomb is so sick. I mean, she is really, really sick. Talked to her today. Man, she's just getting her voice back, and she said, I'm not going to be there again tonight, Pastor. I don't want to expose anyone to it. I thought about coming, but we both agreed, no, it's better, keep that chunk at home. Don't bring it down here. And but I don't, on Wednesday morning, I don't wake up and think, oh man, who's going to head up AMP Student Ministries tonight? Lynetta has done it for 7 years, closer to 8 years, I think. Is that right, Stephanie? Seemed about like 8 years. What a great worker. I appreciate her so much. She's a tremendous volunteer. We have had numbers of, I remember at one time having 60 kids in the youth group. It's fluctuated to 30, it's been 15. It depends on who's at what grade at different times. I'm very thankful for who we have. I appreciate Shelley Russell so much. I don't wake up on Sunday thinking, well, who's going to head children's church today? Oh no, what are we going to do? I just thank God so much for our team that we have in place. I'd love to pay them what they deserve. I'd love to see what they could do if they didn't have other careers. I would love that. But see, here, that's not the point. The point is that in a business, you got sole proprietor that moves to a manager. A manager will say, okay, now, Billy, you're my hired hand, and I want you're going to mix the paint from now on. Okay, and so Billy is the paint mixer, and Mike is still, he's the boss. But Mike is still the one who's responsible to make sure it gets done. And so a lot of times, this is the level where churches stalemate. And I think we're at a critical point in our life of our church right now. We're having, on a really good day, we'll have the most we've had was 140 people in the building on a Sunday morning. Most Sundays it's about 120. Last week I think it was 116. And that's everybody. That's every adult, every child. That's the whole kit and caboodle, both services. We're at a point where it's easier. This may not make sense to you, but it's easier to grow from 100 to 200 as a church than it is to grow from 0 to 100. There's a mysterious momentum that can happen that is exciting. And we do count people. We count how many are here. Why do we do that? Because we want to have a certain number. No. We count people because people count. Every individual is important. And we want to invest in every single one. And so, but there is a model that happens after a business grows. It's the executive level. This is where, as a manager, Mike says, Billy, I want you to mix the paint from now on. And Billy, you're going to clean the tools and make sure they get put away. But if Billy decides to not do it, then who does it? Mike does it, right? I mean, it's just the way it works. Everybody knows it. So, in other words, the manager says, you've got the duty, but I still have the responsibility. But the difference to the next level, an executive level, is where not only is the duty given to the individual, but the responsibility is given to them as well. And this is a powerful thing. There is a word that is used in the book. It's called multi-staff, multi-member staff. And it basically, this doesn't do it justice, but the idea is that the pastor says, you are over this ministry. Ultimately, if it fails, it's on me, it comes back to me, but you don't have to worry that I'm going to be calling you every night saying, well, why didn't you do this and such? Didn't you get this done? And da-da-da-da-da. That's not how it works. There is a trust that's given, and that's the whole point of what has to happen as we're going over these 12 weeks. What I want you to hear loud and clear is that as you discover your gift and as you find your place on the team, please know that you've got a pastor that is very trusting, that I release people and say, okay, it's your baby, you do it, let's try it. If it fails, that's all right, we'll regroup, we'll start again. But I'm not going to be breathing down your neck saying, you got to do it this way. Oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. I don't trust that decision. Let's redo that. That's not a safe place to be. That's not a fun place to be. All of that is the team ministry. And so over the next year, I see us as a church, we're kind of tottering right teeter-tottering right here between that church planter and that staff model. And I'm wanting to get the team defined. One of the things that you guys are not aware of is that, I mean, you probably know that we had a vision team that went through the entire last year to retweak and to redefine and look at our church vision statement and make sure every part of it was what we believe and how we operate. And here at the end of the year, as we're going into the beginning of the new year, the next thing is that we have a come to Jesus meeting where we say, okay, here's how we said we're going to operate. How many of you are truly on board? Are you really, truly going to do what we said we're going to do? Because if we just said we're going to do it, then I need to know now. But if we're truly going to operate the way that we said we were going to operate, then these are the requirements and the responsibilities. So it's an exciting time for you guys to define what your role is going to be on the team, because we're moving from this more to this. And I do see that more and more I'm able to trust individuals with responsibility and just leave it with them and know it's going to get done the right way. And then there's been some failures where I've trusted someone maybe too soon, and then I go, oh man, they were in over their head, they didn't, oh, and now it's back on me. And so, you know, we're learning as we go together. And so, but that's the team ministry model. That's Ephesians 4 model. And we're a church that's moving away from, it's not one super solo, it's not the super ego, hey, it's the Keith Howard show, I detest it, I don't want any part of that. I want us to get the team involved and for the team to have real ministry and leadership throughout all the facets of the church. Okay, any comments before we go? I probably went long and I don't have my watch on me. What time is it? It's late, isn't it?
8:19.
Okay, so we're at the grace period. Any comments before we go? Anybody questions or anything like that? I hope you'll all come back next week. Do you have something?
Why, I was just going to it's probably, but do we not have staff just because it's not in other?
We can't afford it.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I've got like models that I follow on how much you should spend on staff salaries and we just, you know, we're in an area that's impoverished and we just, I mean, that's the reality. If we had a millionaire drop a T-bill in the offering Sunday, it might change things up overnight. But interesting though, Tommy Barnett talked about that one time. He said, you know, we were just ministering to hurting children. We had a squeaky clean church of 200 and everybody dressed nice and we all came on Sunday and then these snot-nosed kids came in with their ratty clothes and he said one day I heard someone crying and it was one of our members. I thought, oh man, she's upset. She's got all these kids running. I looked down and I realized she had been deeply touched by someone that was so hurting, and there was this little kid sitting next to her, and they had nothing, and she was moved to the point of tears. He defines that as a day when they changed me. So he says, as we began just reaching out to our community this way, Marcia, I mean, to hear you talk about that, as we began to just start reaching out to our community, God sent Alan Meyer from the Oscar Mayer Corporation to our church. Our tithes have increased significantly, right at a point when we really needed to add people on. So, yeah, the reason is finances, but where God guides, He provides. Where He leads, He feeds. So, right? Okay, great question. Any other comments or thoughts, you guys? Well, let's pray.